Okay, so let us wind up to the section 7. We have discussed three subsections of section 7. Section 7 subsection 1, 1a and 2. The last section is 7 subsection 3. It's a very small section. Let us wind it up and then we will start a new topic, nature of supply. Intrastate supplies, interstate supplies. What do we mean by those? So today I will discuss with you IGST Act also. But before that, let me wind up with you section 7 subsection 3 of the CGST Act and let me show you the act. Now this is my 7.3. Now this is my 7 subsection 3 and what it says. Subject to the provisions of subsections 1, 1a and 2. That means 7 subsection 3 comes at the last. It is not supreme than above earlier subsections. Subsection 7 subsection 1, 1a and 2 are supreme than 7.3. That is why the word used is subject. So the sentence is subject to the provisions of subsections 1, 1a and 2. That means whatever those subsections is will be final after this 7.3 comes into picture. The government may, on the recommendation to council, specify by notification the transactions that are to be treated as clause a supply of goods and not as a supply of services, or a supply of services and not as a supply of goods. That's it. Now, if you remember the sequence in 7 subsection 1, it is mentioned that some activities or transactions will be treated as supply. When some activity or transaction is treated as supply, then I come to 7 subsection 1a, which tells me whether that supply, which has become a supply under section 7 subsection 1, is a supply of goods or supply of services. So if you remember, I have schedule 2, which helps me in this regard. Schedule 2 tells me whether any supply is to be treated as supply of goods and supply of services. Now, there may be other exceptional supplies also, which are not written in schedule 2. There may be other exceptional supplies also, which might not be covered in schedule 2. Then how can I tell then whether that supply is a supply of goods or supply of services? How can I tell this then? I will tell it through section 7 subsection 3, because it says that if there is any supply which is not possible to be decided in terms of supply of goods or supply of services, through notification government will tell the name of that supply and government will tell whether that supply is to be treated as supply of goods and supply of services or supply of services. And till today there is no notification issued under section 7 subsection 3. That means even after around 4.5 years of implementation of GST, or not 4.5 years, 18, 19, 20, 21, you can say after around 3.5 years of implementation of GST, still never the need has been felt to issue a notification under section 7 subsection 3. That means my schedule 2 is covering all the supplies. That's it. This is what my section 7 subsection 3 is. Let me simplify this and then we will start a new topic. So 7 subsection 3 says that government can issue the notification in this regard, and government can tell that supply whether any particular supply will be treated as supply of goods or supply of services, but make sure that whatever supplies are treated as supply of goods or supply of services under section 1A, those will remain as it is. No notification, or 7.3 has no power to override this section. This power does not exist. Like for example, if you remember in 7.1a there was an example that transfer of right in goods. If you remember this example, transfer of right in goods. Transfer of right in goods. Can you tell me whether this supply is treated as supply of goods or services? Do you remember this? Anyone who can tell me whether it is a supply of goods or services? Transfer of right in goods. It's a supply of goods or services. Do you remember?
Yes, it's a supply of service.
Yeah, it is a supply of services. Now, no notification can be issued under section 7.3. No notification can be issued. Notification is not possible which can be issued under section 7 subsection 3, which can make this supply as supply of goods. This power does not exist with 7 subsection 3. 7 subsection 3 cannot override 7.1, 7.1a and 7.2. That's all. So whatever schedule 2 through section 1a says, through section 7 subsection 1a says, that is final. But maybe supplies are those which are not at all covered under this section 1a. Those supplies can be covered under 7 subsection 3 notification, otherwise not. That's it. This is what I wanted to discuss in 7 subsection 3, and let me start a new topic now. So it's a new topic. My section 7 is over now, and now I'm starting with a new topic, nature of supply. It's a new concept. Nature of supply. And for this, I will take the help of IGST Act. I need to take the help of IGST Act. So what I will discuss here, I wanted to discuss interstate and intrastate supplies. This I want to discuss now. Interstate and intrastate supply. This is the concept which I want to discuss. It looks so easy, but technically there are some sections which deal with these concepts. So let me now share with you IGST Act. So for the time being, we will stop discussing CGST Act. We will start discussing IGST Act, and after the discussion on this inter and intra, we will come back to CGST Act. So let me share with you IGST Act. I hope it is visible to you. I hope it is visible to you. It is my IGST Act, Chapter 4, Determination of Nature of Supply. Now it tells me how to determine the nature of supply. That is why I wrote nature of supply is my next topic. So this I will discuss now. Now it is section 7 of IGST Act which tells me the meaning of interstate supply. Then I will have section 8 intrastate supply. Then I will be having section 9 supplies in waters, oceans. Supply can happen when the goods are in ship. So when the supply happens, when the goods are in territorial waters, then what happens? That's it. These three sections I will discuss. First, I will read it and then I will explain to you. Now, this is my interstate supply. Act says what? Subsection 1. Subject to the provisions of section 10. That means I cannot call any supply as interstate supply without reading section 10 first. Because 10 says what? Subject to the provisions of section 10. First, I should follow section 10. Then I will say that supply of goods where the location of the supplier and place of supply. Now, these two words, or not words, tenses are new. Now, these two are different concepts. Now, I must search about location of the supplier and place of supply. And if you see, location of recipient of goods or services does not matter. Where the location of recipient of goods is there, it does not matter. Suppose I am in Delhi or maybe I am in Germany. I am in Germany. I have given the order to purchase two laptops from India. For example, a person is in Germany and in India he has given the order to purchase two laptops. So I'm not concerned whether the person is in Germany or in India because I'm not concerned about the location of the recipient of goods. I'm concerned about from where the goods are being supplied. So the location of the supplier and a new word, place of supply. I will tell you this word, place of supply. But these are two new words. So as a layman, anyone can say that any supply is interstate or intrastate, but in reality, as an expert, you have to check these two concepts, location of supplier and place of supply. If both these two concepts, location of supplier and place of supply, are in two different states, or two different union territories or one state and another union territory, because in all the three clauses, clause A, clause B and clause C, technically two states or two authorities are involved, maybe two different states, two different union territories or one state, one UT. Then this supply is treated as what? It shall be treated as supply of goods in the course of interstate trade or commerce. This is my first point. So first you should refer section 10, then you should check if the goods are supplied, not services. In subsection 1, I am talking about only goods. Act talks about only goods. And the supplier's location of goods and the place of supply of goods are in two different states or two different UTs or one state, one UT. By default, this supply is subject to interstate supply. And if GST is applicable, it will be IGST, integrated tax. Next, supply of goods. Now, before proceeding with this, let me show you a little bit of section 10, not in detail. Let me show you section 10. It tells you the place of supply. It tells you the place of supply. This is my section 10. It will tell me the place of supply. Place of supply of goods other than the supply of goods imported or exported from India. I can say that section 10 talks about domestic supply of goods, where neither I am importing the goods nor I am exporting the goods. So whatever is happening within the nation. So section 10 tells me that whenever domestic supply happens, what should be the place? If supplier is in Delhi, recipient is in Kerala, what should be the place of supply? So there are so many things. It depends on what type of goods are those, etc., etc. I will tell you this later on. come back to my earlier section 7. Now subsection 2. 7.1 is clear. Now subsection 2. In case the goods are being imported into India, till they close the customs frontiers of India, goods are being imported until they close the custom frontiers, then by default it shall be treated as interstate supply. So all imports, the simple point is all imports of goods by default interstate, on which apart from charging custom duty, the government will charge IGST also, because all imports under section 7 subsection 2 are by default interstate. Now subsection 1 and subsection 2 talks about only goods. Subsection 3 and 4 talks about only services. Now it says what? Subsection 3. Subject to the provisions of subsection 12, supply of services. Now it talks about services, not goods. Where the location of the supplier and the place of supply. Now remaining is same. Location of supplier and place of supply, 2 different states, 2 different union territories, 1 state, 1 UT. By default, this supply of service is interstate. And similarly, when you import any service, this supply is by default interstate. So there is no difference in supply of goods and supply of services. The only difference will be, in case of goods you talk about goods, in case of services you talk about service. In case of goods you use the word subject to the provisions of section 12. In case of services you use the word subject to the provisions of section 12. So first let me simplify these points, then I'll come back again to the Bare Act. Are you facing some disturbance? Are you facing the disturbance?
Yes, sir.
Is it manageable or not?
Sir, you can speak. It's manageable.
Your voice is not clear. Is it manageable or not?
Sir, it's actually not manageable. When you speak, the voice is disturbing.
Okay, please wait. Let me see.
Yeah.
Is my voice clear now?
Yes, sir.
Is it clear now? Is it manageable now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you see the notepad now? Can you see this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so let me first discuss with you section 7. Now it is of IGST, not CGST. It is of IGST Act, and it will talk about interstate supplies. Now I will divide this in 3 different parts. What I can supply goods. So for supply of goods, I have different rules. What I can supply services. So for supply of services, I have different rules. Or what you can supply. Now there are some rules which are common for supply of goods or services or both. Now for supply of goods, I will apply with sections, section 7, subsection 1 and 7.2. For supply of services, I will apply with section 7, 3 and 7.4. And for supply of goods and services, I apply 7.5. Now by default, these are of IGST. This you should not forget. Okay. Now let me start discussing with you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in sequence. Now what is 7.1? So the heading is supply of goods.
Sir, can you go to the last slide also?
Sushant, your phone always makes a disturbance.
Sir, can you get to the previous slide one?
Yeah, I will go. I'll go. Is it fine?
Yes, sir.
So kindly tell me whether I should proceed or not.
Yes, sir, we can proceed.
Okay, now supply of goods. Now what section 7 says? It says that when location of supplier, not the recipient, plus place of supply, when these both are same state, same UTs, sorry, not same, different states, different UTs, or one state and one UT. Then this supplies by default interstate. And if it is interstate, then if GST is applicable, if applicable, because you don't know whether that is exempt or not, then IGST will be applicable. But you have to refer section 10 before taking any decision of the IGST. So we will discuss 10 later on, but I have to refer section 10. This is my first point. I cannot bypass section 10. Then the turn is of section 7 too. It was talking about import of goods. Every import of goods is by default interstate. By default interstate. And if GST is applicable, if by default it will be IGST. That's it. So when imports are covered here, I can say that I can say that 7.1 will cover only domestic. Because by default, international is covered here. Okay, international. Where countries are enrolled is covered here. So by default, 7.1 will talk about domestic only. This is my supply of goods, which is interstate. Next. My next heading is supply of services. Section 7.3 and 7.4 of the IGST Act. Now same thing, just like supply of goods, the same concepts will apply here. In case it is domestic supply, that means section 7.3 of the IGST. Why I am writing IGST Act always with sections? Because if I do not write by default, I have told you that the sections are of CGST Act. If these are of IGST Act, I will write. That is why I am writing everywhere whenever I use this section of the IGST Act. Now, if location of supplier, same thing, plus place of supply of service. If these are different states, different UTs, one state and one UT, then by default this is also interstate, and in case it is interstate, then of course one thing is sure, if applicable it will be IGST only. But now I cannot bypass, so I should refer section 12. Do you know why I should refer these sections? These sections will give me the place of supply. This is what the point is. Similarly, why I will refer section 10? Because through section 10 I will get to know place of supply. So that is why there is a relation. Because until and unless you have place of supply, you cannot tell whether the supply is inter or intra. So who will tell place of supply? That place. Now just because I am selling the burger in Delhi or from Delhi doesn't make Delhi as the place of supply. I am giving you an example only. Just because you are performing some work here at one place, it doesn't mean that the place of supply becomes that place. Just because you are performing or supplying any goods or services from Haryana, it doesn't make the place of supply as Haryana. We have specific set of provisions. Which type of services is that? Which type of good is that? Whether that good require movement of goods or whether the good doesn't require movement of goods. So there are so many considerations. So don't treat place of supply as simple, easy word. As a layman, you can say that place of supply will be Delhi if you are supplying burger from Delhi. But as an expert, you will ask that first show me section 10 or 12, whatever is the case. So why you should refer section 10 in case of supply of goods? To determine whether it is inter or intra, because section 10 will tell you place of supply. Why you should refer section 12 in determining whether any service is intra or intra, because this section 12 will tell of place of supply. I hope the point is clear. Then what help I'll get from section 4 of the IGST Act. In this case, import of services are covered. By default, every import of service is interstate, and if it is interstate, if GST is applicable, by default that will be IGST. So here also, technically, I can simplify the concept by saying that this 7.3 covers domestic supply of service, and this 7.4 covers international supply of service. And last is now a mix where it does not matter what you supply. You may be supplying goods or you may be supplying services. So it does not matter what you supply. You may be supplying goods, or you may be supplying services, or both. Section 7, 5 of the IGST. So the provisions remain same. In case of 1 and 2, why I had to segregate? Because why I had to segregate? Because in one case I was using section 10, and in case of services I was using section 12. So it was necessary to segregate the heading supply of goods and services. But now, in all the points which I will discuss now, here it does not matter whether you supply goods or you supply services. So let me again show you the Bayer Act, and then let me tell you the concept of section 7.5. After this, my interstate supply will be over. So let us have a look at the Bayer Act. Please start referring original languages to learn something. Now this is my 7.5. What is written? You can himself see supply of goods or services or both. So it does not matter supply of goods or services or both. Clause A. When the supplier is located in India and the place of supply is outside India. So the supplier is in India. For example, I am supplying laptops and I am in Delhi. The place of supply is outside India. I'm not saying that the location of recipient is outside India. Place of supply is a different concept. So don't assume that this place means a physical place. No, it can change its area. So this place is a technical word, which I will tell you when I will discuss with you the concept of place of supply, section 10, 11, 12 and 13. But for the time being, you remember that when supplier is in India, but the place of supply is outside India, still it does not matter where the location of recipient is. Location can also be in Delhi. Now you simply assume an example. I am a supplier of laptop in Delhi, and the recipient of laptop is also in Delhi. But the recipient says that you have to send my laptop in France. You have to dispatch this laptop and you have to deliver this laptop at the address of France. So do remember one thing, both supplier and recipient were in Delhi, were in India, but maybe the place of supply is outside India. So never assume one thing yourself, that when place of supply is outside India, don't assume that by default location of recipient will be outside India. No. As a supplier, I can be in India. As a recipient, I can be in India, but maybe the place of supply is Dubai. For example, I am an interior designer. Let me tell you this with the help of notepad, so as to make the concept clear. What I want to tell you is that three things are main: location of supplier, location of recipient, and place of supply. And place of supply. These three things are there. Point 1, point 2, or concept 2, concept 3. It is possible that supplier is in India. It is possible. It is possible that recipient is in India, but maybe the place of supply is Dubai. Let me give you a simple example. This supplier is interior designer. And he is in Delhi. Who is the recipient? Mr. X. Mr. X has a property in Dubai. Mr. X has a property in Dubai, and Mr. X contracted this designer that designed my Dubai property. So Mr. X is in Kerala, for example. So what is happening? Supplier in India, recipient in India, but place of supply, place of supply has no relation where the location of supplier and recipient is. These two are different things. Place of supply has no relationship where the supplier is or where the recipient is. Like I am giving you in this example, that supplier Delhi in India, recipient Kerala in India, but the place of supply is Dubai, because I will tell you the rules later on. Within section 12, there is a rule that whenever you supply any services related to the immovable property, then place of supply becomes that place where that property is situated. I hope the point is clear. And still the rules are not yet complete. I am simply giving you an example so as to make sure that in your mind these three are treated as three different points. Don't mix these three. It can be different place, it can be different place, and it can be different place. I hope the concept is clear, and then let me again come back to the Bayer Act. And let me wind up this 7.5 today. So what it says, if the supplier is in India but place of supply outside India, it is treated as interstate. Clause B, to or by a special economic zone developer or special economic zone unit. Now do you remember SEZs? These are special economic zones which are basically formed to make sure that good quality products are manufactured in these zones, which can be exported. So these zones comes with some concessions also in taxes, maybe concessions in terms of electricity, water, etc., labor laws, maybe. But these zones are formed with a specific intention so as to promote manufacturing, to promote economic activities. So different set of provisions might be employed in these zones as compared to the other factories which are outside the zone. So whether these factories which are in this zone, these supply something, buy, or whether you supply anything to these factories, because these factories also need raw material and these factories will supply finished products. So whether supply is to these zones or whether supply is by these zones, in both the cases the supply is treated as interstate. The last clause is supply in the taxable territory. So what is taxable territory? India, anywhere whenever supply happens. And if it is not treated as intrastate supplied, if it is not at all covered in earlier subsections, section 7 subsection 1, 7 subsection 2, 7 subsection 3, 7 subsection 4, 7 subsection 5, clause A, clause B, then by default you have to assume that supply as interstate. It is just like Income Tax Act, where any income is not covered under the four heads, salary, house property, PGBP, capital gain, by default that income is to be treated as income from other source. Same is the case here. If any supply is not treated as intrastate supply, if any supply is not covered under any of the provisions of interstate supply, by default you have to treat this as interstate supply if the supply is happening in the taxable territory. Then all these three clauses are treated as interstate supply. Let me simplify this point for you. So now the last discussion or third main heading, because I have covered what? In case of interstate, I have covered supply of goods, I have covered supply of services, and let me cover now goods or services or both. So common set of rules. If you do simplification, then in case of goods, you should refer section 10, and one point was import. In services, what was the point? You should refer 12 and import. In goods or services or both, basically there are 4 points. If I simplify these three clauses, I can make 4 points. First point. Now this is my first point. Location of supplier is in India and place of supply is outside India. Such supplies are by default interstate. If it is interstate, IGST will be applicable if applicable. Second point, supply by special economic zone anywhere, supply by special economic zone interstate. If you are supplying to special economic zone interstate. Now what is this? For example, in Maharashtra, this area is a special economic zone. This area is a special economic zone. So we have 10,000 factories in this zone, for example. So whatever these factories will sell, whether in India or outside India, whatever is that, these factories will charge IGST. Similarly, suppose this is another area, normal factories are there, and these factories are selling to the special economic zone, then also these factories will charge IGST. Don't get confused with this point that supply is happening in the same state. Point clear? State is same, Maharashtra, but within Maharashtra, one factory which is in non-special economic zone is supplying something to another factory which is in special economic zone. Now technically this area is having special rules and regulations. Though it is in Maharashtra, still it is treated as interstate supply because of this point. I hope the point is clear. Had it been a different factory, for example, this is also a factory in non-special economic zone, then this supply would have been subject to CGST, intrastate or SGST, whatever is the case. But now within the same state, if one factory of non-special economic zone is supplying something to another factory of special economic zone, then it is interstate. It might be in the same state. And the last point is any supply which is happening in India in taxable territory. What do I mean by taxable territory? In India, which is happening in India and which is neither treated as, because of specific provision, neither treated as intrastate supply nor covered under interstate provisions which have been discussed just now, By default, don't treat it as exempt. You have to assume this supply also as interstate. That's all from my side for today. My section 7 is over, where I have discussed with you in detail interstate supply, and tomorrow I will wind up intrastate and territorial waters, and if time permits we will start another concept also. So goodbye for now. Thanks.